the saint who could be in two places at once, the saint who stopped bombs, the saint who bore the wounds of Jesus Christ. Today we will explore the story of Padre Pio, from his life and controversy to miracles and teachings. Padre Pio, born Francesco Forgione on May 25, 1887, in the small town of Pietrelcina in southern Italy, was raised by devout parents. His mother and father, humble peasants, were deeply religious, regularly attending church, praying, and fasting. Early in life, his parents' financial situation prevented him from attending school, but he filled this hole with faith. From a very young age, he enjoyed praying and going to church. As early as 5 years old, he saw his first celestial visions of saints and angels, and at the age of 9, he began repenting by scourging himself and even sleeping on the floors with a rock for a pillow. Francesco would avoid playing with cussing children, and there's a story on how he protested his mother taking broccoli from another farmer's field, saying that it would be a sin. It seems that he was born with righteousness within. One of his childhood friends later described Francesco as follows: "When he was with us, he never prayed. There was nothing particularly outstanding about him. With us, he was a boy, just like any other, well-mannered and reserved. It's a great example of how God chooses his servants. Like the apostles, most saints were normal people. If anything, more mundane than the rest of us." At the age of 10, Francesco decided to become a Capuchin friar, inspired by bearded brother Camillo, who lived in the Capuchin friary in Morcone. Camillo frequently visited Pietrelcina, asking for alms and gifting children snacks or religious items. Francesco's desire only grew stronger as he got older. When he was 15 years old, he experienced a vision of a beautiful, shining man who took him by the hand and said, "It is convenient for you to come with me and fight like a good warrior." Francesco expressed his desire to become a friar to his parents, who then visited the Capuchin friary to inquire about accepting their son. Unfortunately, his education wasn't sufficient to be accepted. His parents, knowing of his devotion, didn't give up. Francesco's father, Grazio, emigrated to the United States to earn money for his education. Francesco began studying with private tutors, and it paid off a few years later. In 1903, at the age of 15, Francesco was accepted by the Capuchin friary in Morcone. That's when Francesco became Pio. However, Pio's struggles didn't end, and his path to priesthood was tested by countless bouts of sickness, including chronic bronchitis and fevers reaching 118 degrees Fahrenheit. Sickness didn't prevent Pio from completing his studies, and on August 10, 1910, he was ordained a priest by Archbishop Paolo Skinosi at the Cathedral of Benevento. He spent the following 6 years recovering in his hometown Pietrelcina, helping the local priest conduct Mass among other priestly duties. The beginning of Pio's priesthood was marked by the extraordinary. On September 7, 1910, Jesus and Mary appeared to the praying Padre Pio. Following this apparition, he received the stigmata, wounds about 1 centimeter in diameter that extended through his hands, yet they did not bleed. Stigmata are spontaneous wounds corresponding to Jesus Christ's crucifixion wounds. It's primarily a Roman Catholic phenomenon, and the first recorded case of stigmata goes back almost a millennium when Francis of Assisi received them in 1224, after seeing a vision of a seraph, an angel with 6 wings. Since then, there have been hundreds of cases of stigmata, but the Vatican is reluctant to recognize them as miracles. Stigmata is seen as a holy gift from God to a person so devout that they identify with the suffering of Jesus Christ, with its signs manifesting physically in the form of wounds. Going back to Padre Pio, he prayed for his stigmata to be removed. He reportedly said, quote, "I do want to suffer, even to die of suffering, but all in secret." End quote. It shows his exceptional humility. His prayers were heard and the stigmata disappeared for the time being. In 1916, Padre Pio was sent to the Church of Our Lady of Grace in San Giovanni Rotondo. Despite the remoteness of his assignment, that's where Padre Pio began building his reputation as a mystic, following his path towards sainthood. In the evening of August 5th, 1918, Padre Pio was hearing confessions, when suddenly Jesus Christ, wielding a blade ablaze with love, appeared in front of him and stabbed him right in the heart. Padre Pio remained in pain for 2 days, believing he would die. It wasn't just a vision, it left a 3-inch-long cross-shaped wound on his left side. Padre Pio wrote about this transverberation to his spiritual directors. Padre Agostino consoled him. August 6th was the feast of the Transfiguration. Jesus wanted to transfigure your spirit and inflict on you a wound that only he can heal. And Padre Benedetto reassured him, all that happens in you is a consequence of love, of the vocation to be co-redeemer. This event was soon followed by another, which changed Pio's life forever. On Friday, September 20th, 1918, Pio's stigmata returned, this time also on his feet. The 31-year-old Pio was meditating at Our Lady of Grace in front of a wooden crucifix before wounds opened through his hands. A month later, on October 22, 1918, Padre Pio described his feelings in a letter to Padre Benedetto. Dear Father, I am dying of pain because of the wounds and the resulting embarrassment I feel deep in my soul. Padre Pio's wounds were examined by numerous doctors. The wounds were about 3/4 of an inch in diameter, and an X-ray revealed that bones and cartilage weren't damaged. Additionally, the surrounding tissue was healthy and showed no swelling or inflammation, indicating that the wounds were not self-inflicted by acid or puncturing. This time, the wounds were bleeding up to a cup per day, and nothing could stop it. Also, some people reported seeing light emanating from them. Padre Pio's stigmata baffled both medical doctors and clergy. It is reported that even atheist doctors acknowledged that there was no way the wounds were forgeries, and all medical explanations were rejected. Pio wanted to suffer in silence, and at first tried hiding his stigmata, but women at the church saw them, and talk spread. Several months later, the story of Padre Pio's stigmata reached the wide world. Padre Pio, the humble priest in remote San Giovanni Rotondo, admired by everyone around him, suddenly became a worldwide celebrity, prompting pilgrim visits from every corner of the earth. He spent the next few years listening to hundreds of confessions daily, according to some sources, spending up to 15 hours a day in the booth. The number of pilgrims flooding San Giovanni Rotondo was astonishing, even evoking police presence to control the crowds. Sadly, despite his undeniable righteousness and humility, Padre Pio had enemies. His influence lured away worshippers from neighboring congregations, stripping them of funds. As Padre Pio's fame grew, so did rumors of his impiety and claims that he was faking his stigmata, and Pope Pius XI could not ignore it. He requested the Holy Office to launch an investigation into Padre Pio, specifically regarding the validity of his stigmata. The Vatican had information from physicians that Padre Pio had secretly purchased carbolic acid, which could be used to create the wounds. However, Padre Pio stated that he used the acid to sterilize syringes while he was taking care of the sick. Additionally, officials didn't find any acid in Padre Pio's cabinets. Most of those who investigated Padre Pio concluded that his stigmata were likely authentic, with the notable exception of Agostino Gemelli. He wanted to examine Pio's wounds before a Mass, but Padre Pio refused it because Gemelli didn't have a note of authorization from the Vatican. It resulted in Gemelli slandering Pio in his report, stating that he was hysteric, lacking intelligence and spirituality, and that he faked his stigmata. A couple of years later, in 1922, Padre Pio was instructed to hide his stigmata from the public. His Mass times were also changed daily to minimize the number of people participating. In the following years, the Vatican was planning to transfer Padre Pio from San Giovanni Rotondo to some even more remote location, but the congregation protested, preventing Pio's transfer. This controversy did not stop Padre Pio's fame from growing. As a result, in 1931, he was stripped of all his ministerial duties. He was banned from hearing confessions and celebrating Mass publicly. Padre Pio accepted this with grace, and 2 years later, in 1933, Pope Pius XI closed the investigation and permitted him to hold public Mass again, stating, "I have not been badly disposed toward Padre Pio, but I have been badly informed. The following year, Padre Pio was allowed to hear confessions again. With Padre Pio back in the public life of the Church, he remained controversial among some circles, but scrutiny was massively outweighed by public support. Moving on, we can explore the other aspects of the mystical and miraculous life of Padre Pio. For most of his life, Padre Pio was fighting the devil not just spiritually but also physically. He mentions being attacked by the devil in numerous letters. For example, on February 13, 1913, he wrote to Padre Agostino, "Now 22 days have passed since Jesus allowed the devils to vent their anger on me. My Father, my whole body is bruised from the beatings that I have received to the present time by our enemies. Several times they have even torn off my shirt so that they could strike my exposed flesh." A month later, Padre Pio wrote a similar letter to Padre Benedetto. "These devils don't stop striking me, even making me fall down from the bed. They even tear off my shirt to beat me, but now they do not frighten me anymore. Jesus loves me. He often lifts me and places me back on the bed. These attacks could be heard at night, even from the outside. The devil and demons would manifest physically in Padre Pio's bedroom and lunge at him, but Pio's faith allowed him to prevail. If anything, such attacks only strengthened it." Bilocation is a phenomenon where a person appears to be in two places at once. It arises from the belief in transubstantiation, primarily held by Catholics, which teaches that during the Eucharist, the bread and wine become the body and blood of Christ. There are numerous stories about Padre Pio's bilocation. However, they are unverifiable. No one can prove that Padre Pio was in fact in two places at one time. During the Vatican investigation, Padre Pio was asked directly about it. He responded, "I don't know how it is, or the nature of this phenomenon, and I certainly don't give it much thought. But it did happen to me to be in the presence of this or that person, to be in this or that place. I do not know whether my mind was transported there, or what I saw was some sort of representation of the place or the person. I do not know whether I was there with my body or without it." The healing miracles of Padre Pio can be traced way back. For example, in 1919, a 14-year-old boy in San Giovanni Rotondo confessed to Padre Pio, who then touched his back, deformed by typhus. The deformity disappeared instantly. The same year, a 62-year-old man with 2 broken legs, who walked with the support of 2 canes, confessed to Padre Pio. Reportedly, Padre Pio told him, "Stand up and go away. You have to throw away these canes." The old man got up and walked without the canes. Such stories are almost endless. However, the Bishop of Volterra and the consultor of the Holy Office, Raffaele Rossi, who investigated Padre Pio, stated that, of the alleged healings, many are unconfirmed or non-existent. In Padre Pio's correspondence, however, there are some credible declarations that attribute miracles to his intercession. Such miracles didn't stop even after Padre Pio's death. If anything, they became more frequent and conclusive, paving his way towards sainthood. On October 31st, 1995, Concilia de Martino started feeling acute pain in her neck. In the following days, a grapefruit-sized growth appeared, leading to her admission to the hospital in Salerno. After 2 CAT scans, doctors discovered that Concilia's neck was filled with 2 liters of lymphatic fluid, caused by the rupture of the thoracic duct in her neck. They scheduled a surgery for November 3rd. While awaiting her surgery, Concilia prayed to Padre Pio and called Fra Modestino Fucci, a close associate of Padre Pio, asking him to pray for her. He did so at the tomb of Padre Pio. On November 2nd, one day before the scheduled surgery, Concilia felt better. On the day of the surgery, the doctors were in complete disbelief. A pre-surgery examination revealed that swelling in Concilia's neck had completely disappeared. Furthermore, an X-ray revealed that her ruptured thoracic duct was completely healed. Concilia was miraculously cured, and surgery was cancelled. Further examinations confirmed the results of her healing. In July 1996, the Vatican began investigating this miracle. After years of investigation, the Vatican stated that the healing of the traumatically ruptured thoracic duct of Concilia de Martino on November 3, 1995, is scientifically inexplicable. It was declared a miracle on October 20th, 1998. This led to the beatification of Padre Pio in 1999, the first step towards sainthood. Another confirmed miraculous healing took place in 2000. On January 20th, 7-year-old Matteo Pio Colella was diagnosed with meningitis, which infected his respiratory system and kidneys. He was admitted to Padre Pio's hospital, home for the relief of suffering, and fell into a coma the next day. Doctors prognosed that he would die in the following hours. Matteo's mother went to pray at Padre Pio's tomb, while Matteo later reported, "I saw Padre Pio in a dream on my right and 3 angels on the left, one with golden wings and a white tunic, and the 2 others with white wings and a red tunic. Padre Pio on my right told me not to worry because I would soon be cured. In fact, my cure was like the resurrection of Lazarus." Miraculously, Matteo recovered. This miracle was the one that helped to pronounce Padre Pio a saint following his death. Keep in mind that the Vatican is very reluctant to confirm miracles. If they confirm something as a miracle and it later gets objectively debunked, the Vatican would lose credibility in an instant. According to some, Padre Pio had the gift of prophecy. The most famous example of this comes from World War II. Padre Pio received visitors from his hometown of Pietrelcina. After staying with Pio for 3 days, the young men were planning to return home the next day. But agitated, Padre Pio pleaded with them to stay. The following morning, he asked them to join in prayer, and minutes later, bombers appeared in the sky heading to Foggia, from where the men would have departed. Padre Pio stated that Foggia and its train station are going to be decimated, but that the men will find another train to get them home. The following day, the men left the monastery and witnessed the decimated train station, but found a train heading home from another point in Foggia, all as Padre Pio prophesied. After being ordained and returning to his hometown of Pietrelcina, Padre Pio was asked by local farmers to help deal with plant lice that were destroying their crops. Padre went to the fields for a prayer, following which the farmers heard the endless sound of dead lice falling to the ground. There are also stories of Padre Pio levitating. Some of the most amazing testimonies come from pilots during World War II. Dozens of pilots carrying out bombing missions around the Gargano region in Italy reported seeing a flying monk with hands up in the sky. This ghost would deflect bombs, making them fall into the woods instead of designated targets. Even the planes themselves would turn around against pilot commands. After the war, some of the pilots visited the monastery and instantly recognized Padre Pio as the flying monk who saved San Giovanni Rotondo from the bombs. Many pilots converted to Catholicism after meeting Padre Pio. He also had the gift of discernment. Padre Pio could distinguish the nature of spirits and objects. For example, on several occasions, he would ask priests whom he did not know, dressed in lay clothing, to return dressed in their clerical clothes. Additionally, there are stories of Padre Pio knowing that an item he was asked to bless had already been blessed. We have merely scratched the surface of Padre Pio's miraculous life, but now, let's explore the lessons we can learn from him. Perhaps the most popular aspect of Padre Pio's teachings is his 5 rules for a healthy spiritual life: weekly confession, daily communion, spiritual reading, meditation, examination of conscience. Padre Pio emphasized that everyone should take daily communion unless they believe they are in a state of mortal sin. When questioned about the necessity of weekly confessions, he replied, "A room needs to be dusted once a week, even if nobody is there." He encouraged rigorous Bible reading and prescribed 2 meditation and 2 self-examination sessions every day, once in the morning, to prepare for the battle, and once in the evening, to purify your soul from every earthly affection that might have been able to attach itself to you during the day. Padre Pio described meditation as the key to progress in the knowledge of self as well as the knowledge of God, and through it we achieve the goal of the spiritual life, which is the transformation of the soul in Christ. He suggested focusing on Jesus' passion, death, resurrection, and ascension as subjects for meditation. To one of his disciples, he recommended following these rules. Never be pleased with yourself. Do not complain about offenses perpetrated against you. Forgive everyone with Christian charity. Always groan as a poor wretch before your God. Never marvel at your weakness, but recognizing yourself for what you are. Blush over your inconstancy and faithlessness to God, and confide in Him, tranquilly abandoning yourself to the arms of the Heavenly Father like a babe in the arms of his mother. Never exult in any way in any virtues, but ascribe everything to God, and give Him all the glory and honor. Despite having many rules for spiritual life, Padre Pio had utmost faith in God's love and forgiveness. I believe that not a great number of souls go to hell. He also reassured the existence of the devil and encouraged others to put their faith in Jesus. Do not let the many snares of the infernal beast terrify you. Jesus, who is always with you and who fights with you and for you, will never let you be deceived or conquered. He also encouraged everyone to offer their suffering as a sacrifice to God without making themselves a victim. Physical and spiritual ills are the most worthy offering you can make to Him who saved you by suffering. Moreover, Padre Pio saw anxiety and worries as arising from a lack of faith. Our sweet Lord is deprived of giving us many graces solely because the door to our heart is not open to Him in holy confidence. Despite his fame, Padre Pio is one of the best examples of humility. In one of his letters, he wrote, "To God alone, and not to me, give praise and thanksgiving. You owe nothing to me. I am but an instrument in the hands of God, capable of serving a useful purpose only when handled by the divine craftsman. Left to myself, I know how to do nothing except sin and sin again." Despite his righteousness, Padre Pio was a blast to have around, and he advised, "Drive melancholy away, even sing a few little songs. Joy with peace is the sister of charity. Serve the Lord with hilarity." In some ways, Padre Pio was rather conservative and was incredibly obedient to the Church, despite the lifelong scrutiny he had experienced. For example, Padre Pio's sister, who was a nun, left her order following the Second Vatican Council. Pio reportedly told her, "They are wrong and you are right, but still you must obey. You must return." Pio also warned women about vanity and would refuse to hear confessions from women dressed inappropriately. Additionally, he held Sabbath holy and on Sundays organized activities for San Giovanni Rotondo inhabitants to prevent them from working. That being said, Padre Pio wanted to help people not just spiritually, but also physically. In 1925, Padre Pio opened a small hospital, which was destroyed by an earthquake in 1938. After its destruction, Padre Pio started working towards a more ambitious goal and began collecting funds to open a bigger hospital. His labor came to fruition in 1956 when he opened the Home for the Relief of Suffering in San Giovanni Rotondo. Padre Pio called it, "A seed planted on earth by God, which He will warm with the rays of His love." Today, it has over 1,000 beds and serves nearly 60,000 patients every year. The hospital also has a scientific research wing praised for its excellence, publishing about 200 research papers each year. Padre Pio died at 2:30 a.m. on September 23, 1968. The day before, he held a Mass celebrating the 50th anniversary of his Stigmata. He appeared weak and frail and even collapsed during the Mass. That night, he confessed for the final time and passed away hours later. On September 26th, the Capuchins held his funeral ceremony, drawing about 100,000 mourners. Such a crowd wasn't surprising, as by the time he died, Padre Pio was receiving thousands of visitors every year and as many as 5,000 letters per month. Decades later, in 1997, Pope John Paul II declared Padre Pio venerable, and 2 years later, on May 2, 1999, he was beatified. On June 16, 2002, Padre Pio was declared a saint, attracting over 300,000 people to St. Peter's Square in Vatican City. Padre Pio's impact is undeniable. According to a National Catholic Reporter article published in 2001, items associated with Padre Pio generated $2 million in sales, while hotels, bars, and restaurants around San Giovanni Rotondo generated about $110 million in revenue. Today, There are more than 3,000 officially recognized prayer groups around the world dedicated to Padre Pio, and his hospital continues to receive millions of dollars in donations. While many claims about Padre Pio should be taken with a grain of salt, his influence is undeniable. He saved thousands of people, both spiritually through his ministry and physically through his hospital. Padre Pio teaches us to be humble, embrace suffering with open arms, and trust in the power of prayer. Even atheists can learn a thing or two from Padre Pio. Humility, resilience, and hope are universal human qualities that help everyone go through even the harshest periods of our lives. I want to end this video with the following words commonly attributed to Padre Pio: pray, hope, and do not worry.